Spoiler alert, Jon Jones popped again. That's right, UFC superstar Jon Jones failed another test for performance-enhancing drugs.
I thought I'd take it in my own hands to bless some kids this Christmas before the big fight.
But don't worry your pretty little head about it. Several bald guys say, these aren't the roids we're looking for. Hello, I'm Cavassier the goddamn Newt. This thing is a fiasco. From Jones unbelievably failing another drug test to the UFC's decision to pull up stakes and move the whole circus to another town. Why did Dana White and the UFC jump through every hoop and take all the risks to move an entire pay-per-view event from Vegas to LA on 6 days' notice? For money? Most of the usual gaggle said it was pure UFC greed, but they never explained what money they were talking about.
You have to look. Why did they ultimately move instead of canceling the whole thing? There, in addition to the losing, or
you could have survived and maybe lost a couple thousand.
They can still make money on pay-per-view, right?
It's like on every level, it still kept this card alive.
You know, it's very confusing as to why. So the UFC is banking on the fact that whatever money they'll lose at the gate, however pissed off people might be, they'll make it all back times 10. By having a successful pay-per-view.
I didn't realize I was going to have to learn so much science.
And the only thing that I keep coming back to is, they're saying, I'm just left wondering why.
Or did the UFC brass really believe Jon Jones was innocent this time? That he was clean and Dana was just looking out for his guy? Thanks to the OGPs. You asked if I'd look into this, so I did. To be honest, it wasn't the kind of answers I expected, but they actually explain a hell of a lot more, like Dana White's newfound insistence that everything's about to get super awesome. So stick around.
Pop goes the wine and the weasel.
And this is how the UFC reacted to the most recent failed drug test by Jon Jones.
We're moving it from Las Vegas to the Forum in LA. I'll turn it over to Jeff to explain what's going on.
A urine sample, Jon Jones, tested positive, very, very small amount. And worldwide anti-doping experts told us.
You are moving UFC 232 from Las Vegas to Los Angeles because Jon Jones tested positive again for a banned substance?
He did not test positive. He did not test positive. Go ahead.
Yes, this is not another positive test.
Not test positive.
Not another positive test.
Jon Jones tested positive again.
He did not test positive. Go
yes,
ahead.
Jon Jones tested positive, not
positive.
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 He did not test positive.
Tested positive.
He didn't do anything
not
positive.
For a very, very small amount.
Again, I'm trying not to be confused here. If it's not a positive test, why would it have to be moved? Trying not to be confused. If it's not a positive test, why would it have to be a positive test? Why would it have to be moved?
Changing the venue from Vegas to LA is a big damn deal. The cost alone is insane. Anyone who tells you it's a money grab, respectfully, is an idiot. This is not a short-term business decision, because it's all risk with very little upside. It shouldn't take an MBA to understand that. Of course, Jones and Gus would sell better than Cyborg and Nunes. But how much better? 200,000? 300,000 more? Max, you're looking at 9 million extra in pay-per-view. It's not nothing, but the change in venue alone takes 6 million off the top and lost gate revenue. And the UFC still has to pay for T-Mobile Arena, probably with heavy penalties to cover the venue's lost parking and concessions. Next, you need at least double all costs associated with putting on a pay-per-view card. You have twice the travel, twice the lodging, twice the logistics. In all likelihood, the UFC lost money moving everything to California to keep Jones in the main event. And if we could figure it out, you can be damn sure the UFC knew they were in for a financial loss. So why do it?
Some stay illiterate and feeble, legally licked, you go the ways of the weasel.
The The impact of the decision is much deeper than just money. The UFC moved heaven and earth while taking on massive risk to make this happen. Consider just a few points. By pulling the event from Vegas, they're hijacking millions of dollars from the Las Vegas economy, in turn making the Nevada State Athletic Commission responsible because they refused to sanction Jones, but California didn't have a problem. They damaged their relationship with the Nevada Commission and with local businesses.
Why don't you just be patient for a second instead of waving your hand? You're asking me a question. I take full responsibility and accountability for my team.
They also put the California Athletic Commission in a vulnerable spot. How do they look if Jon fails his next test? Nowitzki's tweet gives a clue about the UFC's actual motivation here. This case exemplifies how advanced and sensitive drug tests have become. With this comes a greater responsibility and the need to look at each situation objectively. The decision yesterday showed both of these things. You can't make everyone happy. First, there's no evidence a new, more sensitive test was used. We know the test used to detect long-term metabolites in Jon's system was developed several years ago by the head of the Russian WADA lab. He's saying USADA didn't have the new level of responsibility and objectivity needed for the situation, which is why it was necessary to relieve USADA of their independent administration of their anti-doping program and handle it themselves. Are we to believe that Dana White suddenly thinks Jon Jones is clean and won't have a major mess up anytime soon? And he's ready to risk millions of dollars and the reputation of the UFC as well as his own to stand behind Jon, all while alienating their partners, sponsors, the rest of the card, the media, countless fans, and several state commissions? The short answer? Wrong. Uncle Dana doesn't trust the tyrannical kid to stay out of trouble. Now, all the activity we saw around the handling of this fiasco is evidence of the first step in the UFC's plan to completely overhaul their anti-doping program. We now know that the UFC knew about multiple failed tests from Jon Jones since August, long enough to make plans to use this bad situation for their long-term benefit. USADA was the independent administrator of the UFC's anti-doping program. That changed when Dana revoked their authority and stepped in to dictate protocol from his office at the UFC headquarters, going so far as to publicly undermine USADA's testing credibility.
Not test positive. He did not test positive. Go ahead.
Not another
Positive.
The USADA era is over, inevitable once the cost-benefit ratio began to swing in the wrong direction. Back in 2014, the Zuffa-owned UFC had 3 goals: legalize MMA in the state of New York, position themselves for a TV deal with ESPN after the Fox deal runs out, and sell the UFC for the most cash possible. In 2014, the UFC so-called steroid epidemic was one of the major talking points with mainstream news or sports talk. Joe Rogan loved talking about it too.
You know what? This here is a testosterone derivative. And
Zuffa rightly believed that bringing in USADA to independently create the strongest anti-doping program in sports was the only way to achieve their goals. It's hard to complain about a steroid epidemic in the UFC when their testing program is significantly more robust than any of the big 4 professional sports or even the Olympics. UFC made a devil's bargain with USADA. They may have recast the UFC's image and helped them achieve their goals. They did sell for $4.2 billion. MMA became legal in all 50 states, and their new TV partner is the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN. But along with all the goodies came the ever-increasing costs. The Octagon lost countless fights and fighters to suspensions, injuries, and lesser performances because of USADA. It's one thing to lose a fighter to suspension when you're selling the company for billions of dollars or making $18 million at the gate for the first New York card, but it's a lot harder to swallow the cost of losing your stars when people assume Bellator is cleaner than the UFC, because no one pops for roids over there. USADA served its purpose. At this point, they can do little good for the UFC brand or business. You remember the early days in the USADA era, when each positive test just meant it was working. But now, the more cheaters USADA catches for the UFC, the more they look like the only ones in sports with a PED problem. In baseball, the sport that invented PEDs, there were 9 players suspended for banned substances in 2016, 2 in 2017, and 3 in 2018, making a grand total of 14 PED suspensions, and none of them were stars or superstars. Over the same period, the UFC had roughly 80 suspensions, plenty of them big names, including Jon Jones a half dozen times or so. The UFC won't drop USADA outright. As old TJ likes to say, having USADA looking over your shoulder is kind of like holding a wolf by the ears. You're not too happy about the situation, but you damn sure don't want to let it go. In fact, Dana White has recently been making mouth noises about signing with USADA for another year. The Jon Jones situation gave the UFC an opportunity to take back executive responsibilities from USADA, to do it in public for everyone to see, while simultaneously dinging USADA's credibility and weakening them just enough to keep them in line and on the cash teat. This move will create a new paradigm in the relationship between the UFC and individual state athletic commissions. If you want events in your jurisdiction, you're gonna have to pledge fealty. Kiss the ring, Jed Clampett.
I just think that if you're going to cheat, there's probably better ways to do it.
USADA's role will probably be limited to collecting and testing samples. The independent administration of oversight and adjudication will be handed back to the individual state athletic commissions, just as it was pre-USADA. But expect there to be a sizable monetary benefit for each commission, taking on additional responsibility for the UFC. Commissions will likely call hearings to interview fighters directly and seek their opinion for making improvements to the system. Guaranteed, the first recommendation from the commission hearing will be to roll back the 24/7, 365 random testing protocol. They'll call it overly burdensome on the athletes and unnecessary. Friend of the channel, Ariel Hawani's been saying for years this was an issue. So you know the media will be on board when the tests go back to catching about 1 dude a year. By 2020, the UFC will have an anti-doping program modeled on the National Football League. As they say, the NFL doesn't have PED testing because you'd need to be an idiot to fail. Not that this is going to help Jon at all. Both of his brothers managed to fail NFL drug tests. All the changes will boost UFC business across the board. Virtually no main card or star will be lost due to suspensions. Also, fewer pullouts for nagging injuries or weight cut issues. Hell, it'll be a return to the pre-USADA glory days of superhero physiques, spinning head kick knockouts, dominant Brazilian champions, and random heavyweight 5-rounders that make this look slow and uneventful. Well, that's what I see. There are so many angles to this situation, it's hard to wrap your head around all of them at once. In short, I'm saying yeah, Jon Jones popped all roidy again. But it wasn't short-term greed or belief in Jones' innocence that moved UFC 232 from Vegas to LA. Nah, it was the UFC deciding to use a bad situation as cover to start the process of gutting their anti-doping program.
Have you ever heard the phrase, the tail wags the dog? A dog has a tail at the back, and the tail wags.
Thanks, Harry Potter. I think we got it.
Okay, this is a phrase meaning...
No, really, we got it. I'm considering a multi-part series to examine the remaining questions around Jon Jones, Jeff Nowitzki, and what the actual science can tell us. Let me know your interest level in the comments section below or over on the Twitters. Remember, this isn't supposed to be easy.
Hakuna Matata. Shake, baby.
I'm very small and quite tame.